Hey everyone, welcome to the Good Girl Confessional podcast. I'm your host, Sandy Lowries, and the Good Girl Confessional podcast is proudly brought to us today by Women Beyond 40 magazine. Today in the confessional, I'm chatting with UK entrepreneur Sam White. Sam is the founder and CEO of Stella Insurance, based here in Australia and run by women, taking on what has traditionally been a male-dominated industry. Sam started her first insurance business at the young age of 24, but over the last 20 years, she's built a number of successful UK-based businesses. She is passionate about helping other women to succeed, and we love everything about her as a rule breaker. Welcome to the confessional, Sam White. Hello, and welcome to the confessional, Sam White.
Hey, nice to see you.
All the way from the UK. Thanks for joining me because it's quite early there in the morning.
It is, but the sun is shining today, which is a real rarity in the north of England. So I'm going to take it as a win.
Nice for you. In Melbourne here in Australia, it's actually freezing today. And
it always shocks me when I talk to the Aussies and it's cold. Whenever I've been over there, it's always been absolutely glorious. So I'm not sure I believe you, Sandy.
I swear we're heading into winter. And we did just get a big announcement here in Melbourne that we're back to being locked down due to COVID. So yet another lockdown.
Yeah, that's not good. We've been pretty much in lockdown for 2 years, but things are opening up again over here.
Oh, thank goodness. Yeah, thank goodness. And how are you guys coping over there? Because it's been huge.
Yeah, we've just all sort of adjusted to a new sort of normal. I actually think a lot of people are going to have challenges coming out of the other side, because we've started doing home working. I mean, my business, I've always been keen on the idea of smart working and people having the flexibility to work from anywhere. And we never quite got it to be a reality. And actually, COVID has pushed us into a situation where that is the reality. So now we're in this sort of halfway house of, the lease is up on our office. What kind of office do we get? Which people want to come back in, which people don't. It's a lot to take on board.
Yeah, and you've created some pretty incredible businesses. So you'd be faced with, I guess, and challenged like a lot of big businesses are here as well. And you're right, we are kind of in this kind of weird space right now.
Yeah, for sure. And, some of my businesses were hit harder than others during COVID as well. So you have all the trauma of that challenge of trying to survive in a very uncertain set circumstance. And certainly for me and the team, I think one of the biggest challenges has been making sure that everybody kind of stays together during that process and that we're checking in with each other and that we're conscious of that kind of human impact of these kind of events. Because, we have had people that have got seriously ill with COVID. We've had people that have lost family members. So they're dealing with that sort of backdrop while still trying to adjust to a new type of normal at work. So, it's a lot.
Yeah, it is a lot. And look, as much as we've been in Victoria here in Australia, especially, this is our fourth lockdown now, so it's been pretty tough at times. Having said that, we don't have the extraordinary numbers that the UK has had and the US have had. And so we're really feeling for you guys as well. It's kind of extraordinary to watch the news and see what's going on overseas.
Yeah, I mean, you guys have done really well. I think you managed it extremely well. I think, there's a couple of sort of advantages that you have just because of the sheer size and scale of the country. Also, a lot of the evidence that's coming out is that the transmission rates when you're outside are way, way lower. Hence, our sort of opening up from lockdown has been sort of pubs and restaurants allowing us to be outside. We got hit during the winter when everybody's spending so much time inside, and Christmas, I think, was a real killer for us in that it pushed everybody together, and the virus liked that a lot, and the transmission rates were really, really high.
Yeah, wow. Well, I'm feeling for you guys so much, and there's a lot of people who've been massively impacted in so many ways. I wanted to chat with you about. I just think that your story is extraordinary. I think you're incredible, and as someone with an entrepreneurial spirit, as I do myself, I look at someone like you, and to me, you are like the zenith of all of that. You're definitely incredible. So I wanted to ask you about how you started out as an entrepreneur, because you were very young and you did something quite extraordinary. Do you want to share that with us?
Yeah, people often ask that, how did you even think to set up a company at 24? But in a lot of ways, I think it's a lot easier when you're younger. You've got less to lose. I've got a couple of kids now. I don't know that if I'd come to that at this stage of life, I would have had the same bravery, because there's so much more responsibility and so much more that can go wrong, I think, as you get older. But I had a bit of a epiphany at 24, and it was actually as a result of some quite challenging life experiences. So I'd had quite a difficult childhood, problematic for a number of reasons. And when I'd left university and gone out and got a job, I did very well with the job. I sort of got promoted and promoted, and ended up on what was actually quite a lot of money for a young person. So I ended up on sort of about 50,000 a year, which I guess is about 100,000 Aussie dollars. And that was, that was some years ago. I'm not getting any younger. And, company car, all of this good stuff. I wasn't particularly taking care of myself, though. And, as you get older, you start to understand why certain things, certain behaviors happen. And, I was smoking and drinking, and, I had this really high powered job, but I was also kind of burning the candles at both ends. And three things sort of happened in quick succession. I went out for a night with a group of male friends, decided it was a good idea to have a water fight at 3 o'clock in the morning, which probably wasn't, and ended up breaking my leg. So I dislocated my ankle and broke my leg. And it was completely non-weight bearing. So this incredible job that I had was a sales job and needed me to kind of drive around the country and do it. And I just couldn't do it. My bosses at the time were pretty pissed off with me because I was carrying a lot of the sales targets. So they exerted quite a lot of pressure. And then whilst I was off and I'd got this broken leg and I was kind of ruminating on stuff, I realized that the relationship that I was in at the time, that I'd been in for sort of 3 or 4 years, was not the right relationship for me. So I split up with my boyfriend at the time. And then about a month later, my mum died. And I think this sort of culmination of kind of quite big life events really made me kind of stop and go, am I on the right path? And the resounding answer that I got back was categorically not. Yes, on the surface in some areas I was ticking some boxes and people would be like, oh, you bought your own house and you're doing really well. But in all the stuff that really counted in terms of my sort of mental well-being and health and all that sort of stuff, I was completely off kilter. So originally I just wanted to go traveling. I'd made this plan that I was going to go traveling around the world, and I'd find myself and I'd kind of have this new adventure. And whilst I was off, my uncle that had a CCTV business at the time called me, and he knew that I'd had this successful sort of sales career and he was really struggling with his business. And he asked me for some help. He said, I know you're going to go traveling, but before you go traveling, how would you feel about getting involved with the business and helping me do some sales? So I was like, sure, yeah, fine, no problem. And so I set up in my sister's conservatory, because I'd moved in with her after I split up with my boyfriend, because I just wanted to, have a bit of company and be around people. And I set up with a phone and a desk and started doing these appointments for him. And what happened was it just organically kind of grew from there, in that every time he introduced me to a business contact that it was in his industry, they would say, oh, can you do something for me? Can you do something for me? And eventually I just ended up with a company, and I was supposed to go traveling. And then all of these people were like, you can't go, like, we need you to do this thing. And I suddenly realized actually I'd got a business. So it wasn't, I think people think that in order to be an entrepreneur or to have a company, you've got to have had this burning desire and this vision for this incredible empire. And actually the truth of it is that if you follow, it sounds cheesy, but if you follow your gut and kind of go, okay, what's right for me right now? And then how can I make these things work to have the life that I want? I think you've got more chance of actually building the business that you want in the long term.
You're mind blowing. I love how you're like, I just kind of fell into it. But the reality is that you clearly were just extraordinarily good at what you were doing as well.
I think the thing for me is I'm infinitely curious. Like I'm always like, if I meet somebody out there doing something that I haven't done, I always want to know all about it. How did you do that? How does it work? Who are the players? I've always had a real interest in business from being a young age and how that functions and how it works. But I think if you like people, and you clearly like people, Sandy, it's obvious instantaneously. You can find those connections. You can find those reasons that they will want to do some kind of project with you and you with them.
Oh, I love that. I love the way that you said that. And it's true. And you're right. I do love people. And I think clearly you do as well. But I love that you're not just an entrepreneur. You like to shake the tree. I feel like you're a bit of a rule breaker, and I kind of like that as well. So you step into it, basically building your own insurance company, which is a very male-dominated area. How did it feel at the time when you started sort of launching into that direction? And taking on the boys, if you like.
Yeah, I mean, I've always, even in the playground, I would always be going toe to toe with the boys and, demanding that they say that girls are better than boys. And, we've got some quite funny stories from my childhood. I'm still best friends with my friend that I had when I was 4. And actually, she's the FD of the business now. And so we often laugh about the sort of early signs that I was likely to go down this path. It's, for me, I do think that there is an imbalance in the world when it comes to men and women. I don't think that that's men's fault. I think that the system that sits behind us all is fundamentally flawed. And, I have always passionately believed, not that I'm better than men, but certainly that they're not better than me. And it frustrates the hell out of me how many women just naturally fall into this submissive position and kind of, and it's crazy really, because we all know, like any woman that you speak to, if you ask them if they're in a crisis, who do they go to? They will generally go to their female network. And, and that's because women are fundamentally resilient and strong. And, they stand up and be counted. Women are the backbone of society. And I would just wish they knew it more themselves. So when I went into the insurance industry, yes, it was male dominated, but I just automatically assumed that they would treat me as an equal. And actually, because I automatically assumed that, in a large percentage of situations, they did. Did I have some sexism? And certainly when I was younger, did I have some wildly inappropriate men behave in wildly inappropriate ways? Yes, absolutely. But my reaction to that was to push back very, very hard. And for me, I just wish that there was more women that understood the power that they have and the strength that they have, and use that out in the world to shake things up and shake their own trees in whatever area they happen to be in.
I bloody love that. We're really mad for a rule breaker here at the Good Girl Confessional. And
I'm your girl.
You are our girl. I love it. And that's it. I mean, I think that you're very right. I started a magazine off the end of this podcast, and it's now in print and digital, and launched it during
That's
COVID.
fantastic.
It's great. It's terrific. I don't know what I was thinking to do it during COVID. And as we all know, the publishing industry is kind of in a weird space. And but what I discovered, much to that, was I got really sick and tired of the narrative, if you like, the societal narrative around how society views women, and especially women over the age of 40. And so I went looking for magazines that were like speaking to our demographic, if you like, and there weren't any. So I created one. And I think in a moment of madness, but really what I wanted to do was create opportunities for other women in their 40s, and creatives, writers, artists, whoever it may be, and business women to tell their stories. But I think what you do on your podcast, which is amazing, and I should mention your podcast because I've been listening to it and I love it, and it is really good. So it's called Human Business with Sam White. But what I love about it
Thanks for the plug there, Sandy.
I gave you a plug because you deserve the plug, because I don't know that there's anybody who has a business or wants to start a business or has a side hustle that couldn't get something extraordinary out of the podcast. How did that come about?
Yeah, that's like my little sort of passion project. So insurance in itself, I mean, it's hard to get excited about insurance. Most people, if they ask you what you do for a living and you say you work in insurance, they'll change the subject pretty quick. There's some of me that gets upset about that, because there's lots of great stuff in the insurance industry, and there's lots of stuff that I love about it, but as a fundamental kind of product, it hasn't hit the mark. And I hope that we can change that with Stella, but it is what it is. But one of the things that's always really driven me and fascinated me is the culture that we have around business, that we separate it from our humanity, which I think is the fundamental flaw in the capitalist system. Is this idea, and I picked it up from a very young age, this kind of, it's only business, it's not personal. And that for me is absolute nonsense. There is, it is personal. It's always personal. It's people that are involved in this process. And you cannot leave your morality at the door, and you can't leave your humanity at the door because you're trying to make a profit. And so I kind of been ranting about this stuff for a number of years. And a friend of mine was chatting to me about this concept of podcasts and the ability to have much wider conversations with people off the back of it. And I just really felt like that there was conversations I wanted to have that I wasn't having. So, when you do press or magazine articles, normally somebody will come to you and they'll say, we'd like to talk about this. So for me, they might come to me and say, what's the future of insurance? What's your view on this? So you're giving your view for sure, but you're giving it about topics that they're deciding on. And the beauty of a podcast is that you can decide what you want to talk about. And so what I loved was the idea of bringing in people that you were expecting to have a certain kind of conversation and having a completely different kind of conversation. So, Donna Scully, for instance, very successful lawyer in our industry who is a real trailblazer for women. But I wanted to talk to her about the kind of vulnerability that she has around the fact that she didn't get qualifications until later in life. And she was a sort of unexpected champion in the way that she came forward. And we talked about imposter syndrome as an example, but we were talking about, our childhoods and, how that shapes the people that you are. And that for me, that's the conversations that I think business leaders need to have. Because if I want, my daughter's 7, and I really want her to know that she can be and do anything that she wants to be and do, just the same as I want that for my son. And I want her to be able to see herself in women that do, whatever kind of job, whether they're an astronaut or a business leader or whoever. And I think we have this habit as women in particular of projecting this perfectionism. you know, everything about my life is perfect. You know, I look perfect. I'm coiffured. My life, you know, I've got the perfect husband and the perfect children and blah, blah, blah. And the fundamental flaw with that is that you can't connect with that. And if you can't connect with it, then you're not going to see that as something that you can be yourself in the future. And so I think by humanizing business leaders and having those conversations, you allow that next generation to go, maybe that could be me. I've seen myself in that situation, or I've felt those feelings, or I've done that. It doesn't mean that I can't be successful. You know, you can be a disaster and still pull yourself around the next day. You can have terrible things happen to you and still find the resilience to do really great stuff in the future. So that was kind of the purpose behind it, I guess.
And I love that filters through a lot of your podcast episodes. The fact that you can fail and that you get up, you learn, right? And you just keep going. And that if everything was really super easy, I think, I can't remember which podcast episode I listened to, but you had a guest on who said, if things are perfect, people start tampering with it. They start tinkering with the way they do things and ultimately stuff it up. When if you've got a business that's working and you're making money and whatever, just let it go. But I love that you talk about that, the vulnerability and how everybody fails. And you know, tell me, I guess, about times in your life where in business that you felt like you thought you were going one way and it maybe didn't work out, or it went a completely different direction.
All the time, every bloody day. It's, you know, I think the thing that people often don't realize, that I see, because I really dig in with people when they've got businesses, to exactly that. It is the same for everyone. I've never spoken to an entrepreneur who they've done something, it went swimmingly right off the bat, no problems, straight the way through, jobs are good. That just doesn't happen. And I think, you know, for me, I was dyslexic as a kid, and that in itself is quite humbling, because you just can't do the stuff that the other kids can do. And I knew I wasn't stupid. The teachers didn't know I wasn't stupid because I couldn't read the questions for the different subjects. So I really had to dig down to get over that point. And I was in the bottom set for everything. And then when it finally clicked and I managed to work through the dyslexia, I started to move up the groups. But I think that did give me a healthy dose of resilience from quite a young age. And then, you know, challenging childhood. Mum was a dysfunctional alcoholic, and that caused quite a few challenges to my sort of emotional growth as a young person. And I sort of realized that this stuff can be worked through, whatever it is, whatever the challenge is. If you acknowledge it and you're prepared to put the work in and kind of move through it, you will get out through to the other side. And it's exactly the same with business. The business kind of grew and developed so we set it up in 1999, and it was organically grown. I could never borrow any money. The banks wouldn't touch me with a 10-foot barge pole. My bank manager insisted I brought my dad in to even agree to a £2,000 overdraft. Absolute arse. But I kind of had to organically just keep chipping away and growing it. And then I got to a certain point and it really started to take off. And by the time I'd got to sort of 2010, the business was flying and I was making a really significant amount of money. I mean, we were turning over 18 million, I think we were, which is 36 Aussie. We were making really decent profit, and I ended up moving to Beverly Hills, which is an entirely different story. Lived there for 2 years, just crazy adventure. But I really thought I'd made it. I'm driving around in a Lamborghini. I'm living in Beverly Hills. Like, I am the balls, or boobs.
You're the boobs, yeah.
I'm kind of, I've got this swagger on. And then the businesses that I had in the UK suddenly there was a massive regulatory change that meant that they couldn't continue doing what they were doing in the way that they were doing it. And I lost 60% of my revenue lines in a 4-week period. And it was a kind of complete just brick wall. I went from 350 staff. I had to downsize. I had to take it down to 100 staff. I had to reconfigure the business, change the direction that it was going in. And it was very sobering, because it made me realize that even if you do get it right, even if you get in the right space and you're doing the right thing, it does not mean that the universe will not throw a bowling ball right through the middle of you here. It's, it's going to happen. And, I've had a number of sets of circumstance and setbacks since then, because you're trying to move into different areas of business, and you're learning and you're developing, and things go wrong and you start again and you move forward. But part of the joy for me is the process. It doesn't just have to be, what I realized when I was in Beverly Hills and I'd got all of this money and I'm driving around in these fast cars, what I realized is that actually you're no happier than you're happy. So if you haven't got that stuff sorted, then the other stuff makes absolutely no difference. And people say that, and you kind of go, and certainly it's better to have financial security. But I do know that the happiest times I've been in my life have been nothing to do with whether I've been financially in the best possible position or not. It's always been to do with the other stuff.
Yeah. Wow. And you know what? I love that bloody quote. I feel like everyone should have that on the wall. You're only as happy as you're happy, right? And, that's kind of, I love that, actually. You should have that on a poster.
I get it plastered behind me. It's just really true. And I've had times where I should be absolutely miserable because all hell is breaking loose, but I felt great, and I felt great because I'd been great. And that, I always come back to that and know that if I can get myself in a good position, then everything else takes care of itself. And, my friends and the guys that I work with do make fun of me because I'm constantly trying new stuff. So at the moment I've started meditating because I've read so much good stuff about it and how healthy it is for you. And I just find that if I can lock in one new good habit that works for me emotionally a year, then it's kind of a cumulative effect that I'm hoping by the time I'm 60, I'll be, no bad days.
Well, I'm in my 50s, so I'm praying that I have my crap together by the time I'm 60. That's for bloody sure.
I think you're doing all right there, Sandy. You're pretty happy to me.
Thank you. I am pretty happy, I've got to say. So let's talk about your extraordinary venture, which is Stella Car Insurance, which is, you describe it as insurance for women, run by women, which I love because my magazine tagline is written for women by women. So I feel like, kindred spirits in that way. So tell me how Stella came about.
Well, that is a story. So again, I feel like a lot of this stuff that I do probably isn't conventional in the why that I do it. But I've always loved Australia. So I've been over a few times on a holiday. I think the country is phenomenal. I always feel like giving you guys a pat on the back when I go over, like job well done. It's a great society. It's, the food's incredible. The people are incredible. The climate's fantastic. So used to go over, enjoy it from a holiday perspective. And then after my divorce, I don't know if you've ever been divorced, but it's always...
Oh, yeah. I have.
Yeah. So I think the year after is emotionally probably the most difficult period of time I've ever had in my life, because all the things that you kind of relied on in your stability and all your anchor points are kind of thrown up in the air. And so I'd had a really challenging post-divorce year, and business was doing okay from a UK perspective. And a guy that used to work for me came into the office one day and just sort of mentioned that he was working with a company that was doing some business in Australia, and there looked like there was a number of opportunities there. And my sort of entrepreneurial spirit peaked at that point, and I thought, you know what, I'm going to go and have a look. I'd like to get out the country for a little bit. I love Australia. Why not combine the two things that I love the most, which is sort of travel and adventure and business, and see if there's anything there. So I booked a flight. I got on LinkedIn, started kind of reaching out to different people to book in some meetings, and kind of landed and started to go out and see people. And I managed to do a couple of deals early doors that were sort of outsourcing agreements with the UK business with Australia that worked really well. And I started to build those kind of connections with the business community. And from an insurance perspective, I'd always wanted to do something just for women. And, you know, and we've had a bit of pushback, and we've had a bit of it kind of goes one of two ways. Either people go, that's phenomenal, go for it, or they get quite defensive. And it's this whole, you know, you see a similar thing with the whole Black Lives Matter, all lives matter. And there seems to be a defensive pushback at the idea of women doing something just for women, like it should be for everybody. Now, men can absolutely get insured by Stella, of course. My point is simply that everything else by default, because of the way that the system is, has been designed for men. And if you read, you know, Invisible Women, The Truth About Data Bias, you can see how many products and how much stuff is just fundamentally designed by men. Now, that doesn't mean that women can't enjoy it. So for me, I say, you know, I love Chinese food. I'm not Chinese. I can go into a Chinese restaurant and really enjoy Chinese food, and I can enjoy lots of products that have been designed by men. What I'm saying is that I choose to design products for women. And, you know, I think that there's a lot of men that will enjoy those products, but I'm being, you know, very honest about the fact that that product design is designed from a female perspective, and that's, you know, that's what we've put forward. And being able to do that in the Australian market, because in the UK, I'm not allowed to discount women's policies by the amount that I should be allowed to discount them by, because we've got this stupid EU rule that says that it would be gender bias and you can't do it. So, you know, we get all the gender pay issues where we're getting a downside, but I'm not allowed to share the upside. And that's not the case in Australia. So I can reward women for the fact that they're better drivers. I can give them a product that speaks to them and works for them. I can unpick some of the stuff about insurance that has continually plagued me and bothered me in terms of the loyalty tax that businesses naturally put on the customers. And I can design a journey and an experience for women that I think that they will want to engage with. So it was, you know, it was kind of ticked a lot of boxes for me being able to launch a product like Stella in Australia. And it means, again, that we can have conversations that I think need to be had. And if we provoke a response, and if people feel a certain way, then fantastic. Let's come and have a chat about it, because I'm overwhelmingly happy to defend my position in this regard.
All the bloody power to you. I love that. And one of the things I really noticed about Stella when I was looking at your website, and I was really checking you out, you've got some really interesting things involved in the insurance side of someone's car. So things like that I had never seen or noticed before was domestic cover. And
yeah,
do you want to talk about that? Because I thought that was pretty mind-blowing.
Yeah, so I mean, this again comes down to if you take a different lens. So if you step into a product design with an eye from your target market's perspective, and I didn't know this either, Sandy, you know, when we started looking at the underwriting, we discovered that a lot of insurers, if your partner damages your property, you're not insured for it. And of course, that puts women that are already in a vulnerable position in an even worse situation. So if through no fault of your own, you're subject to domestic violence, which often comes with property damage, your insurer won't cover you a lot of the time. So for us, that was something that just needed to be removed, because one of our big partnerships is WAJEC, which is Women and Girls Emergency Centre. It's really important for the team to be supportive of women in general, not just with what they have. So we couldn't, in all honesty, have that view and have those values and allow our policy wording not to reflect that. And I'm sure that there will be a number of other things as the time goes on where we'll find those disconnects. And that for me is okay, but that's the process that we need to go through with this business. The evolution of the business needs to be that we keep checking in with our customers and with that wider societal piece, and checking that our products are congruent with our values, and that each time we find something that isn't, we change it. And that was a real kind of key one for us. And the other thing is this concept of rewarding safer drivers over a period of time and not penalizing them. So we've been doing an awful lot of work around the pricing to make sure that we're consistent in that regard as well. You can't say insurers talk about loyalty all the time, and let's just call it out for how it is. They're not loyal. The industry as a whole has a strategy to charge people more the longer they stay with them. You look at renewal pricings across the board. If you stay, and they have these big brands that talk so much about how they care about the customers and how we want you to stay on board, and yet they'll give a new business customer a cheaper rate than somebody that's been with them for 10 years. That for me is just a complete and utter disconnect. It doesn't make any sense at all. And so we just want to make sure that everything that we do is on the right side, and it fits with it fits with the things that we're saying.
I think the other thing that really struck me about your business plan, and this is all over your website as well, is that as an entrepreneur yourself, you're wanting to support other women, and that Stella Insurance, you're hoping by 2025 will be supporting other female founders launching other organizations. So how does that work? Like, how did that come to be as well? Because that's pretty phenomenal.
Yeah, I mean, again, back to the sort of start of the conversation, I really want to see more female entrepreneurs. I want to see more women accepting the power and the strength that they've got. And so, I spend a lot of time within that community. So, I get involved in projects over here around other female founders and young enterprise and all of that stuff, because it's really important to me. But for Stella, we said, well, what do we think we can really get behind that will make a difference? And I think if we can help support other women get a head start from an entrepreneurial viewpoint, then hopefully we can sort of spawn lots of other sort of purpose-driven, female-founded businesses. And that's the legacy that we all want Stella to have, is something that they can kind of go, all right, we help with that. And in the UK, there's a business called My Happy Mind that's another female founder that I'm really good friends with. And I did not help her set that up in any way, shape, or form, but I really loved what she was doing. She's doing it's around teaching children about their emotional well-being and their emotional resilience, and she's got programs in schools and apps and family-based programs, and it just really spoke to me in terms of the sort of change in the world that I'd like to see. And so Freedom in the UK wanted to help her get that program into schools that maybe couldn't afford it, so we subsidized the program in a number of local schools that couldn't afford it themselves. And, I think every little helps in that regard, in that if you can see a business that's trying to do the right thing and, they're headed in the right direction, can you give them a little bit of a lift up? Can you support in some way, however big or small? And so we all sat around and said, what big hairy goals do we want to aim for as we develop Stella? And we said, well, this has got to be one of them. As we start to become profitable and create wealth, we want to make sure that a proportion of that goes into other pots to support other female entrepreneurs.
And that comes through very much in your entire business. I suppose when you read about everything that you're doing, that comes through. Your value base is incredible. Your integrity is amazing, but there is a genuine, you want to help other people, and it comes through. It's fantastic. So I guess, why should women get on board with Stella in Australia? I mean, I can see a million reasons why, but from your viewpoint, why should they swap over and jump on board with Stella car insurance?
Yeah, loads of reasons. I mean, just even if you don't buy into what we're doing as a business from a value viewpoint, it's a great experience to get the product. It's 40 seconds to a quote, which I think has got to be the fastest. And that's about the fact that we respect your time. Quote journeys a lot of the time are opportunities for insurers to collect data on you. That's the truth, so that they can sell you other products. We've stripped it right down to what we need to be able to underwrite you so that you can get a quote really quickly. We've made it as price competitive as we possibly can, because we think you deserve the best possible price that you can for your insurance product, and that over time should get better because you're in a predominantly female group, because we speak to women, and so we insure more women than men. Women are a better risk, and so over a period of time that will make that group a profitable insurance risk group, which means we can share it back with you. And I do think that as women we do need to support each other more, because the more female founded businesses and the more female leaders there are, the more likely we are to get to a balanced position that your daughters and sons can live in a world where there is that balance and that parity, which I can't understand why anybody wouldn't want that. Like, why wouldn't you want to live in a world where women have got just as much opportunity as men have got? And it isn't just going to happen naturally. People don't relinquish power and control just as oh yes, that seems like a good idea, we're going to do that. They'll do that because they see change, and because there's more decision makers and more women in the driving seat kind of driving that change.
And more rebels and more change makers, right? And I mean, that's exactly what you are, a rebel and a change maker. And that's why I think your story is so brilliant. I think also too, I'm just going to quickly mention too that Stella Insurance has roadside assistance, which, if you're anybody like me, is a huge bonus, because roadside assistance is a big deal. I can change a tire, I just don't want to.
That's absolutely fair enough. And that came out when we did the, because we did a whole survey with women before we even started building the product. And roadside was the main thing that they wanted as part of the policy, a competitive roadside policy. And we're working with our provider as well to integrate those services even further and make that experience better and, more amenable to our female customer brand.
Yeah, it's fantastic. So I wanted to just quickly ask, for any entrepreneur who's out there, especially female entrepreneurs, and not all of our listeners are women either, but for any woman out there listening, what would be your advice on starting a new business?
My main advice always stands the same, which is trust yourself. Like, don't listen to that voice in your head that says you can't do it. And don't be frightened of the no's. Right? You will get a lot of no's. So whatever you decide to do, just accept the fact that lots and lots of people will say that you can't do it, and lots of people won't understand your vision or why you're doing what you're doing. And you've just got to trust yourself. You've got to come back to that kind of faith that you're on the right path. You will get there eventually. It doesn't matter what setbacks you come across. You're gonna get there eventually. And the second thing for me is always about the people. Surround yourself with people that also believe in you. Surround yourself with people that lift you up. If you've got anybody in your team or group or life in general that does anything other than make you feel spectacular on a day-to-day basis, take them out, because you're going to need that energy. You need that energy to push a business forward. You need to have that confidence in yourself. And so you need the people that make you feel that you can conquer the universe and take on the world.
Oh, I love that advice. It's so good. And the other thing I would say is just keep turning up. Because
yeah.
Because, you know, I know myself as, you know, in the middle of a startup business now, constantly you have days thinking, oh God, bloody hell, what have I done? I don't want to do this today. But you do it today and every other day, and you get up and you're adult and, you know, you just show up.
And it's always better once you've got into it. It's like exercise. You know, that first 5 minutes, I am always like, why am I doing this? But at the end of it, you always feel fantastic. And it is absolutely true. There will be days where you don't want to do it. There'll be days where you doubt yourself. There'll be days, and you just have to keep kind of reminding yourself that it's a process, and, you know, one step at a time, just keep going.
Yeah, very, very true. I am absolutely blown away and thrilled to have you as a guest today. And I'm so thrilled that you took the time to come on. I think I could talk to you probably for about 6 hours, but I know that I know that your time is really precious. I hope that next time you're in Australia, we would get to meet. That would be amazing. Because I think you're quite extraordinary.
We are doing wine, Sandy.
We're doing wine.
We are doing the wine. I am coming over. We can have and put the world to rights.
Excellent. We're doing it. Wine and maybe a couple of gins, depending on how the night goes.
All right. Yeah, fair enough. As long as you're not a crier on the gin.
No, I'm not a crier. Thank you so much. I am going to obviously share all the links to Stella, but also to your wonderful podcast and to your website and to all of your amazingness. And I'm really thrilled that someone like yourself has come into the Australian insurance industry and given us something that we haven't seen before.
Thank you. And thanks so much for having me, Sandy. I do really appreciate it.
You are absolutely welcome. Have a wonderful day, Sam.
You too. Take care. Bye.
Thanks for listening to the Good Girl Confessional podcast. The Good Girl Confessional podcast is brought to you by WB40, Women Beyond 40 magazine. Available now at WB40.com. The Good Girl Confessional podcast is available on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and wherever you listen to quality podcasts. We're also now available on YouTube. We chat with really interesting women about their hard-won wisdom, but it really helps us if you can subscribe, like, and share the podcast. Thanks so much for your support. Bye for now.